For the second straight game that he plays in, Artemi Panarin leaves early with an injury. What is the latest on the Breadman? Plus, have Adam Edstrom and Victor Mancini already made this team?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1151 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you will get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And that intro song you're hearing is, of course, Leave the Lights On from our good friends in Passafire. You can check those guys out anywhere you get your music. And the Rangers coming off of a 5-4 win against the Devils last night, a game that featured a lot of the Ranger regulars and essentially zero of the Devils regulars. That, of course, being because the Devils are going to open the NHL season this Friday and this Saturday with a couple of games in Europe against the Buffalo Sabres. So all their regular players are over there. That meant that the Rangers obviously kind of had the upper hand here with obviously, you know, a good chunk of their regular NHL roster participating in this game. It's the kind of game that when you look at it that way, it's like we really better win this game. You know, I'm not going to cancel the season or hit the panic button if they lose, but it's a game that you feel like you should win. And of course, the Rangers were ultimately able to do that. And they now sit at 4-1 on the preseason with one game to go. But one of the kind of headline grabbing storylines coming out of this game is, of course, the fact that Artemi Panarin left the game early with an injury. This is a second straight game that this has happened for the Breadman. The game before this, or rather Artemi Panarin's last game before this, it was the one against the Islanders because he didn't play in the first of the two games against the Devils. But the last time we saw the Breadman before last night against the Devils was a couple nights ago against the New York Islanders, and the Rangers had that big comeback win in that one. But Panarin, unfortunately, not part of that. He left that game with an injury, and this time he leaves even earlier. The game against the Islanders, I want to say Panarin was still out there up until, you know, the third period, or at some point in the third period was when he headed through the tunnel. This game, he leaves early, only 4 shifts. He's out there in the first period, and by the time this game came back from the first intermission and we're going into the second period, word came through that Artemi Panarin had suffered a lower body injury and was ruled out from returning for the rest of this game. And we all hold our collective breath after this. As far as him being ruled out that early, I get the feeling that once Artemi Panarin leaves a preseason game with an injury of any kind, no matter how severe or how minor it might be, there's a very, very good chance that he's going to be done for the night. Artemi Panarin's got nothing to prove in what are essentially, I don't want to say meaningless preseason games, because you can establish a tone, you know, a winning culture, a winning environment, whatever you want to call it. And obviously it's not meaningless for guys that are trying to make this team, guys like Mancini, guys like Edstrom. More on them in a little bit here. But for Artemi Panarin, this guy knows what he's doing. 120 points or whatever it was last season, 3 straight seasons of 92 or more points with the New York Rangers. Artemi Panarin really doesn't need these reps nearly as much as some other players do. But I will say, with all this said, it does feel like it's time for the preseason to end. You know, 6 games is a lot. I think you could probably maybe cut off 2. I mean, I know you want to get a good look at everybody in your organization and give everybody a fair chance to make this team, and the veterans need some reps, the young guys need some reps, et cetera, et cetera. But this does feel like a sport that has maybe 1 or 2 more preseason games than what's absolutely needed. But it's time for it to end because Panarin, you know, has left the last 2 games with some injuries. And you've got Ryan Lindgren. He's going to miss a few weeks after getting hurt in a preseason game. Same thing with Jimmy Vesey. He suffered an injury as well. And they're both going to miss a couple of weeks. That's tough enough. We obviously cannot afford to lose Artemi Panarin. Easily a top 10 player in the sport and does more things than I can possibly list on here and right now to help the Rangers win games. As far as, you know, what the future holds for Artemi Panarin, and for what it's worth, the Rangers do not practice here today, and it's Wednesday as I'm recording this. So as far as like a bona fide, you know, update on Artemi Panarin coming from the Rangers, it doesn't sound like we'll get one probably until at least tomorrow. But for what it's worth, it does sound like the Rangers are seeing this as kind of a precautionary thing, and that's why Artemi Panarin was removed from the game. So we can all exhale. As far as, you know, again, the future and whether Artemi Panarin should play or not on Friday, I'm going to say the Rangers should and probably will err on the side of caution. It is the preseason finale, and it is something of a dress rehearsal. And I think in a perfect world, Artemi Panarin will be 100% healthy, and he'd be a full go for this game against the Islanders. But we are living in an imperfect world, and I think the best thing you can do, given the fact that this guy, superstar player, has come out in the last 2 games with an injury, it's probably best to not have him play in this game. And it's difficult for me to really make that judgment because I don't know what the injury is. It's a lower body injury. That's all that they ever tell us when it comes to these things. And that being the case, it's a little bit vague and hard for me to know. And even if I did know, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know whether he should play or not. But as, just a fan, a Ranger fan watching all these games, the preseason and whatnot, I'm willing to take Artemi Panarin out of the preseason finale to just make sure he's ready to go for the regular season. And it's unfortunate that there will be a big, gap between Panarin's last preseason game and the start of the regular season. But even with that being the case, I'd rather the Rangers err on the side of caution here. And if by any chance Artemi Panarin is not ready for opening night, which, knock on wood, we obviously are hoping that that's not the case and that he will be out there and will be all systems go for the opener against the Pittsburgh Penguins. But if he's not available, I'm kind of thinking maybe Will Cooley gets a chance in the top 6. I mean, it's easy to see him as like this big, tough physical player and obviously inexperienced, a young player as well. But, he played very well for this team last year. And I think if anybody's kind of earned that opportunity, it's probably him. I mean, there's other options you can go with there. Obviously, if Brent Hoffman were to make the team, maybe he gets a shot there. Although I don't think he is going to be making the team. Some people are going to be saying that Adam Edstrom, just throw him onto the second line. I wouldn't do that either. I'm probably going to go with Will Cooley. I think it's probably him being the next man up for this Ranger team. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because, again, it does sound like this is precautionary. And the hope is that obviously Breadman is okay, and then he'll be out there. I mean, preferably in the preseason finale if he's okay. But if not, if there's any kind of lingering injury, then, we'll turn our attention to the regular season as it pertains to Artemi Panarin. And we obviously hope that he's out there on opening night against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, got to keep everything rolling in just a second. The Rangers have had a busy couple of days in terms of transactions. They cut 9 players. They waived 4 players. And we're going to talk about, were there any surprises in the bunch? Is there any chance that the 4 players on waivers will end up getting claimed a little bit later here today? We will talk about all that good stuff in just a second. And I'm also going to talk about some of the positives from the Ranger win against the Devils. Once again, the Rangers posting a 5-4 win against New Jersey in the second to last game of the preseason. So like I said, we'll get to all that fun stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even faster and even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. You've got Gametime Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. You've also got all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You got seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Absolutely love that feature. You get the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Got to shift our attention to a couple of transactions that the Rangers have made since the last time we talked on here. And big shout out to the everydayers, as always. Definitely looking forward to our next episode. It's become kind of an off-season tradition here. Basically, we have our Locked On New York Rangers Fantasy League, and whoever wins the league championship, or in this case, finishes second to me after I win the league championship, that individual gets to join an episode of Locked On New York Rangers as a guest. And in this year's case, it's going to be Ryan Sharkey. He was our runner-up from this past year. So we're just going to be talking all things Rangers with Ryan, and definitely looking forward to that. And then, of course, in our episode after that, going to be looking at whatever happens in Friday's preseason game between the Rangers and the Islanders. Once again, that's kind of a dress rehearsal game, or it probably will be, and it's also the preseason finale. So looking forward to all that. But for right now, once again, the Rangers cut 9 players. that go outright to Hartford, and also 4 players have been placed on waivers. So let's go through the list here. We'll start with the 9 that were cut and will not be making the New York Rangers, at least not out of training camp. These 9 players, just to clarify for anybody who might not be aware of this, they do not need to pass through waivers. They go straight to the Hartford Wolfpack, and there's no risk of them ending up on another team before that happens. But the 9 players, Yaroslav Smalash, and I believe I'm saying that correctly. I'm going by Sam Rosen on one of the preseason games. That's how he was pronouncing it, so that's what I'm going to go with. You've got Bryce McConnell-Barker, Dylan Rubrick, Adam Sikora. Those 4 players right there were all assigned directly to the Hartford Wolfpack, and we're going to break this into little groups here. But as far as those 4 are concerned, there's no real surprises here. I know Bryce McConnell-Barker said that his goal in training camp was to make the Rangers, and that's awesome. It's awesome that he goes to camp with that mentality. I never thought it would happen, although he is somebody that is kind of, creeping up the list a little bit for me as far as, some of my favorite Ranger prospects. Sikora, I was a little disappointed that he got sent down, but I understand why it happened. The reason I was disappointed is I felt that his last showing in the preseason, which was the first of the 2 meetings against the Devils, I thought that was far and away his best performance of the preseason. He looked like the buzzsaw that the Rangers all thought that they were drafting, that we all thought that the Rangers were drafting. And so I would have liked to have seen him get one more crack at another preseason game. But you know what? The regular season's coming up quickly here, and they've got to do what they feel they have to do to get the NHL regulars ready for the start of the season. So Sikora heads down to the Wolfpack, and we'll see how things go for him there. But he's the biggest prospect, I would say, of that group, former second-round pick by the New York Rangers. You've also got 3 players, Blade Jenkins, Nate Sassis, and Blake Hillman. All 3 of them were released from their PTOs and reassigned to Hartford. All 3 of those players I just mentioned played in one preseason game. That was the first of the 2 meetings against the Devils. That's when all 3 of them were out there. To say these guys were rostered long shots is probably a big understatement. I just don't see any path to playing time, but we'll see if they end up with the Hartford Wolfpack this season. Then finally, you've got 2 more players here, Adam Ernie and Madison Bowie, both being released from their PTOs with the Rangers. They will attend camp now with the Wolfpack on PTOs there. Ernie played in 2 preseason games, had 2 assists. I thought he looked good in the last game that he played against the Devils. Bowie played only 1 game in the preseason. That was the 4th preseason game against the Devils. But 2 veteran players with some NHL experience, and we'll see if they end up cracking the Hartford Wolfpack this year as well. Now for the group of 4 that have to pass through waivers in order to make it to the Hartford Wolfpack. All 4 of these players are going to be exposed, and they'll either pass through waivers and go to Hartford, or they won't, and they'll get claimed by another team. Those 4 players are Anton Bleed, Casey Fitzgerald, Brandon Scanlon, and Louis Domingue. Do I think any of these 4 players is going to end up getting claimed on waivers? I do not. But if there's one player in this group that I would say to keep an eye on, and we'll see how things shake out a little bit later here today, but the one player that I would be watching if I'm a Ranger fan is Louis Domingue. And the reason for that is because there's some goalie-needy teams out there. I mean, you look at the mess that's going on right now with the Bruins and Jeremy Swayman. I mean, that's gotten very ugly very quickly, and we're right at the start of the season here, and there's no new contract. The Bruins seem to feel that they've made him an offer that's beyond fair, while, Swayman and his camp, I don't think they appreciate his name getting dragged through the mud the other day by the Bruins brass. So that's kind of a mess right there. And yeah, the Bruins goalie situation is shaky. You never know. I mean, teams can be petty sometimes. Maybe a Metro Division rival of the Rangers claims Louis Domingue. I could see the Penguins pulling a move like that in about 2 seconds. I very easily could see that, not to mention the fact that Domingue is a former Pittsburgh Penguin. But again, there's 31 teams, whether it's Domingue or any of these other 3 players, all it takes is one of them to bite. And again, I don't think they'll be claimed, but we also saw a situation in years past. Jared Tenorti was claimed off waivers when the Rangers put him there. Same thing with Dryden Hunt. I was surprised in both of those instances as well. So we'll see how it goes here. But I mean, you look at the rest of them here. I talked about Domingue, and Domingue does have a good amount of NHL experience. So there's a possibility that a different NHL team could just want to add him as organizational depth and put him in the same role with their team as the Rangers, have him right now as kind of the de facto number 3 goalie. But yeah, I mean, you've got Domingue, you've got Anton Bleed. Bleed is 28 years old, has 12 points in 85 career NHL games. Fitzgerald is 27, 9 points in 63 games. I mean, he's a defenseman, but still. Brandon Scanlon, 25 years old, and just played in his first career NHL game last year with the New York Rangers. And I believe Brandon Scanlon was undrafted, if I'm not mistaken. Scanlon, like, was sort of in the mix for that 6th defenseman spot or 7th defenseman spot after Ryan Lindgren got injured, but it always felt like he was kind of behind Mancini and Mackey in the pecking order, and he will now head to Hartford. If he gets through waivers, we will see. But I think, we're far enough along in the game here, far enough through the preseason. I mean, we're a week away. 1 week from today, it's Wednesday as I'm recording this, the Rangers are going to play the Penguins in the first game of the season. So a quick roll call of who is still on this Ranger team. You got forwards, Brett Berard, Johnny Brodzinski, Sam Carrick, Philip Hedl, Will Cooley, Adam Edstrom, Bo Gru, Capo Caco, Ryder Korzak, Chris Kreider, Alexi Lafreniere, Riley Nash, Brandon Othman, Artemi Panarin, Matt Rempe, Riley Smith, Vincent Trocheck, Jimmy Vesey, Mika Zibanejad. Defensemen, you've got Adam Fox, Zach Jones, Ryan Lindgren, Connor Mackey, Victor Mancini, Keandre Miller, Matthew Robertson, Chad Ruedel, Braden Schneider, Jacob Trouba, and at goalie, with Domingue now being on waivers, you're down to Igor, Quick, and Garand, and that's it. The guys that I think right now are probably hanging on by a thread and virtually have no chance to make the team are Bo Gru. Can't see him cracking the roster. Ryder Korzak, he's dealing with an injury right now. Same thing for Riley Nash. Same thing for Matthew Robertson. Otherwise, I think you would have probably seen a little bit more of all those players in the preseason. And Garand's not going to make it because, Igor and Quick are obviously in position to be the Rangers' 2 goalies this season. Beyond that, though, all the other players' names that I listed, I think everybody's at least got a puncher's chance, and we'll see who's out there for Friday's game against the Islanders. Like I said, I'm expecting kind of a dress rehearsal game where the Rangers mostly go with the players that are going to be out there on opening night, but it's possible, maybe they get one more look at Brandon Othman. Maybe they give one more look to Brett Berard. Guys that right now are maybe sort of on the outside of the roster looking in, the opening night roster. You give them one more chance to create a favorable impression and put their best foot forward and perhaps end up making this team. We're going to talk more about some other things that happen in this Rangers and Devils game in just a second here. I will say, I don't think at this stage in the game that either Brett Berard or Brandon Othman are going to make the team. Coming into training camp, I felt like they both had a chance, and they've played well at times, but I just don't know that they've done enough to stand out in a way where you're going to feel like, oh yeah, opening night roster. I think the better course of action here, given what they've shown so far, the 2 rookie games against the Flyers and all of the preseason as well, the best course of action is to start those 2 in the AHL. Keep developing them, let them get some more seasoning, and you call them up on an as-needed basis at some point this season. I get the feeling we'll eventually see probably both of these players, at least for a couple of games here and there. Othman could very easily be a regular by midway through the season, depending on how he does with Hartford. But if I'm in charge right now, those 2 start the season in the AHL. They have not stood out in the ways that I think guys like Adam Edstrom and Victor Mancini both have, and I think the 2 of them are both going to make this roster. I think at this point, they're getting to the point where it would be a pretty big upset if they don't make the team. And that shows what you can do when you have a strong training camp and a strong preseason. You can really kind of flip the script from something of a long shot to make the team to, wow, yeah, this dude's probably going to be here. It's pretty crazy and a lot of fun to see that happen in real time. But we're going to be talking about the 2 of them, Mancini and Edstrom, and a bunch of other positives to take out of what was a nasty game against the New Jersey Devils. Capo Caco, I thought, had a good night. We're going to talk about him and a bunch of other things in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. I figured to kind of wrap up today's episode, I want to talk about some of the highlights from what turned out to be a very nasty game between the Rangers and the Devils, a 5-4 win for the Rangers. And, as I mentioned, it's one of those things where you look at the Ranger roster for this game, you look at the Devils roster for this game, and for the Devils, it's basically the entire AHL team. It's like that really needs to be a win for the Rangers. Rangers got out 5-2. I could have done without the Devils scoring 2 goals, somewhat late in the third period. Would have been nice to see the Rangers close with a little bit more authority. I think it's important to remember, though, that Dylan Garand was in the game by this time. Igor Shesterkin played the first 2 periods. Garand played the third period. And Garand actually, he made some nice saves in this game too, but looking at the 2 goals that he allowed, I got to think Igor probably comes up with at least one of them, and the final score is not as close as it turned out to be. And one of the Devils' goals, the last one that they scored, occurred with 34 seconds to go. Again, not ideal to give up a goal that late in the game, but it felt like the Rangers, despite finishing a little bit shaky, that they were going to come out with the win. And they did. And a couple positives from this game, just in addition to the fact that they won and are now 4-0 or 4-1, excuse me, in the preseason. Matt Rempe, very noticeable in this game. He was hitting everything that moved, just playing with a lot of intensity. Credited with 7 hits in 13 minutes and 23 seconds of ice time. I have a hard time believing it was not more than that. I mean, his first couple of shifts alone, he's going out there and racking up, 2 or 3 hits per shift. There were a couple where maybe he didn't really hit the guy clean. There was one where he kind of whiffed entirely, where initially I thought it was a hit, and you see the replay and didn't really get much of his opponent, if anything. But yeah, I mean, Rempe looked good. He was doing Matt Rempe things. He was a -1, also had a block shot in addition to the 7 hits that I already mentioned. Almost scored an empty net goal at the end of this game. But every time there was like a pushing and shoving match in this game, every time that the temperature rose, which happened pretty frequently and throughout all 3 periods, it felt like Matt Rempe was in the middle of everything. There was one instance where the Devils goalie was able to freeze the puck in the crease, and Rempe was there, and he's trying to get the puck loose and stuff it home into the net. He's not able to do so. The whistle occurs, and then you've got a couple of Devils stepping up to Matt Rempe. And then not too long after this, there was a shift where he had 2 hits, and then at the end of the shift, Sam Carrick got into it with somebody on the Devils, and big get together, and Matt Rempe got in there and was pushing and shoving a little bit as well. But I mean, he just towers over everybody. He's just an absolute tree on skates, basically, is what Matt Rempe is. And just fun to watch. He's an exciting player and a player that I do think impacts the game in a positive way for the Rangers. So he was looking good, and I think that he's somebody that came into training camp probably with the inside track to make the Rangers. And at this point in the game, I don't see any way. You never know for sure. I don't see any way he starts the season in the AHL. I floated the possibility before the preseason games happened, before even the offseason and the training camp and everything really kicked into high gear. I floated the idea of Matt Rempe starting in the AHL, just to kind of work on his craft a little bit, get some more ice time, and become a more complete player. And while I still don't hate that idea, I'm at the point now where I'm kind of looking at it and thinking like, you know what, Matt Rempe's got to be there, especially considering the fact that the Rangers are now down a forward in Jimmy Vesey. Hopefully Panarin's okay. I mean, I don't expect Matt Rempe to take the ice and play in Panarin's spot and do the kind of things that Artemi Panarin does out there. But, the Rangers, they got a little bit banged up this preseason. Vesey's going to miss some games. I think Matt Rempe should and will be on this team on opening night to start the season. He may have played his last AHL game. It's entirely possible that he's an AHLer for the foreseeable future. Another positive from this game, strong performance for Kaapo Kakko. He scored the first goal. There was a shot from the blue line by Zach Jones that Kakko was able to redirect into the net. Nice deflection goal there. That gave the Rangers a 1-0 lead. But he was very active. He possessed the puck for long periods of time in this game. He hit the crossbar on a rush. He went flying in up the left side, fired a shot that the goalie basically had no chance to stop. Unfortunately, it went off the crossbar and bounced up and out of play. But a couple of nice passes from Kakko. There was one shift in particular that really impressed me where he twice got the puck from along the boards to the center of the ice to Johnny Brodzinski. Brodzinski, his first shot was stopped by the goalie. His second shot went just a little bit high of the net, but a couple of nice feeds by Kaapo Kakko there. And I realized that this almost can't happen due to, the makeup of the Ranger roster and the depth chart right now. But a line that I really liked for the Rangers last year that was very short-lived was when they had Will Cooley, Johnny Brodzinski, and Kaapo Kakko. Those 3 seem to always be in the offensive zone, always have possession of the puck, creating good scoring chances. The reason why I say it basically can't happen now is because Filip Chytil is back, and that's a good thing. Believe me, I'm not complaining about the fact that Filip Chytil is back, and it's just awesome to see him out there, skating and hopefully over the concussion issues and everything. But I really felt like that line, that trio clicked last year, Cooley, Brodzinski, and Kakko. They were out there together at times during this game as well. They were not initially penciled into the lineup on the same line, but the injury to Panarin, now you got to mix and match, and you're going with 11 forwards. So there were a couple of times where they were out there and some good shifts for that trio. It's tough because there's not really a way to make it happen now, but keep that kind of in your back pocket if you're the New York Rangers, that trio being out there together. And I'm not sure exactly how you would make it work now with Chytil being back and Riley Smith is in the mix as well. Because some people might say, well, move Chytil up to the top line. Well, then what do you do with Riley Smith at that point, right? So it'd be hard to figure out a configuration where you can do Cooley and Brodzinski and Kakko all together. But I like that trio. I liked it last year, and we'll see if we get to see it at all this upcoming season. But yeah, Kakko, he was out there for 19 minutes of ice time. Only Vincent Trocheck had more among New York Ranger forwards. Kakko had the goal. He had a +1. That was his only shot on goal, which is a little bit disappointing. He doesn't get credit for the shot that went off the crossbar and out of play. That's technically not a shot on goal. I'd like to see him shoot the puck a little bit more often. It's one of those things where he's kind of passive at times. He defers at times, but my hope is that he does shoot the puck more often going into this season. And with Kakko, I'm going to keep my expectations in check this upcoming season. I feel like he will do better than last year. He'll score a little bit more frequently. Hopefully he stays a little bit healthier. That would obviously be nice for everybody. But if he can give you just solid third-line level production, it's not really what we signed up for and what we thought his ceiling would be when the Rangers drafted him at number 2 overall. But that's at least something. He's a good defensive forward. We know that. We've seen him kill some penalties this offseason, including in this game last night. Will that become part of his game for the Rangers in the regular season? Only time is going to tell there. But Kakko has a chance to be, if not a spectacular player, still a very effective and very valuable player for this New York Ranger team. And as far as like the points and will he ever become like an explosive offensive playmaker, a guy that's a point per game kind of a guy, I'm not so sure that's going to happen. I'd love to be wrong about that. But as far as like point totals go, I'm just going to keep my expectations in check. You know what? Just give us third line level scoring. And the Rangers have enough, ammo beyond Kaapo Kakko where they can survive that. And I think that will probably be enough. And I'd love to see him reach the levels that his draft status would indicate, but we'll see how it goes. Another positive from this game, in my mind, Victor Mancini and Adam Edstrom both just made this team. I don't say that lightly because there is one preseason game left. There's a bunch of practices left. Maybe the Ranger coaching staff hasn't even decided one way or another on whether those guys are going to be out there on opening night. But, man, I mean, we talk about these two all the time, Mancini and Edstrom, and every time we talk about them, we're marveling about what they just did in the most recent game. They just keep getting better and better and better, and we're getting close to the start of the regular season. Like I said, we're only a week away at this point, and, looking at the way that Edstrom and Mancini have both played this preseason, it would be difficult to cut either or both of them, even if the entire New York Ranger team was healthy. But the fact that you're now dealing with an injury to Ryan Lindgren and an injury to Jimmy Vesey, I mean, the door is wide open, and these two have kicked it down. And at this point, to me, it's going to be a pretty big upset if either one of them do not make this team, if either one of them are not out there on opening night. And I hope that they both are. They've earned it. And I love the fact that the Rangers, as an organization, they will allow you to do this. This is a 6th-round forward in Adam Edstrom and a 5th-round defenseman in Victor Mancini. But they're giving them an opportunity, and we've seen in the past, the Rangers don't hold you to your draft status from now until the end of time. If you impress, if you turn some heads, what was Laviolette's quote at the start of training camp here? He said something like, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was something like, because he was asked about the idea that there's not really any room for competition. There's no open roster spots. And Laviolette said something like, there will be a chance for you to smack us on the head and say, hey, I'm here. Well, I think Victor Mancini and Adam Edstrom have both smacked the entire Ranger coaching staffs on the head. And they've let them know we're here and we're ready to go. And at this point, again, I think it's a major upset if either one of them do not make this team. They both played very well in this game. They both scored a goal. Great goal by Adam Edstrom here. A lot of skill on display. Great play by Brandon Hoffman to set this up. He gained the blue line up the right side, hit the brakes, made a centering pass to Edstrom. Edstrom's going to the net, showing some impressive burst, right through the middle of the ice there. His shot is denied, but with his long reach, he's able to stretch out, get to his rebound. He's running out of space and time to shoot the puck, but he backhands at home and he scores. That gave the Rangers a 2-1 lead. And then Mancini, he gave the Rangers a 3-2 lead a little bit later in this game. He picked up the puck at the blue line from Bo Grew, then moves, all the way from the center of the ice at the blue line. He kind of circles around to the right faceoff circle, lets a shot go from the top of the circle, and beats the goalie clean. This shot rang off the far post and went into the net. So an absolute snipe there by Mancini. And again, something else that I continue to marvel about when it comes to Mancini is the very simple fact that even when the Rangers drafted him, I think they thought this, and we all thought this dude is mostly a stay-at-home defenseman and somebody that's not really going to get you any points, doesn't have a ton of offensive skill. We have seen nothing but evidence to the contrary when it comes to that. Now, Mancini's done a great job defensively as well, and that's his calling card. But every time this guy's got the puck, he's making moves, he's making good passes, he's making smart decisions. This is clearly somebody who is not clueless when he's got the puck on his stick. He can make some things happen. And man, you know, it's you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. But between the 2 rookie games, between this entire preseason, the Rangers may have found themselves another late round gem here with Mancini. And something else that I've talked about recently, because Chris Drury, as most GMs are, can be somewhat polarizing among the Ranger fans. We assess him on how the team does, and we assess him on the trades that he's made, and we assess him on, you know, the free agents that he's brought in and guys that he's let walk. We haven't really had a chance, at least not yet, to really assess him based on how he's done with drafts, because, you know, when you're a GM and you draft, you have your first draft class, it'll be a while before we see most of those guys in the NHL. But now we've got, you know, Brandon Hoffman, he's knocking on the door. That was the first pick that Chris Drury ever made as the Ranger GM. We've got somebody like Mancini here who could crack the roster. We've seen guys like, you know, I believe Edstrom was after Drury became the GM. I would have to double check that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that are kind of knocking right now, and we're going to find out pretty soon, you know, how good of a drafter or how bad of a drafter Chris Drury is. But if Mancini makes this team and continues to play the way that he's playing, that's certainly a feather in the cap of Chris Drury. I will say there was one kind of hiccup that Mancini had in this game. Just one nitpick here. There was a play where LeBlanc scored for the Devils. Mancini and Ruido were both on the ice and kind of backing up, giving ground in their own zone. And LeBlanc was there by himself. He didn't really have any help from his Devils teammates. He's able to get to the center of the ice, though, take a shot, and then get his own rebound and put that in. It was basically LeBlanc against, you know, both Ranger defensemen. And I thought they were a little bit too passive here. Both kind of gave ground. And that's the biggest reason why LeBlanc was able to score here. That tied the game at 2-2. But that's just, you know, hey, he's a young defenseman. He'll make some mistakes from time to time. But beyond that, you know, I think he's been absolutely fantastic. To be fair, he's battling Connor Mackey for a roster spot. Connor Mackey scored a goal in this game as well. He finished an assist shy of the Gordie Howe hat trick because he got into a fight in this game. And clearly this is a veteran with some edge and something to prove. And it's not an easy decision, but for me, I think Mancini's been, you know, the better of these two players. And I think he's the guy that should be out there on opening night. Figure we could pretty much call it there. I do want to remind everybody, though, to send in your playoff overtime stories, what you were doing, who you were with, how you reacted, when the Rangers won, any of their 4 playoff overtime games from this last year's run. We're going to be reading and sharing all those stories on a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers right before the start of the season, just to get us all hyped up for Rangers Penguins on opening night. But I figure we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.